He taught in 3 successive stages. First turning of the wheel of Dharma was from the point of view of duality. It was from the point of view of how a consciousness enmeshed in duality could start to begin the process of undoing that dualistic enmeshment. The second turning built on the first turning, and it taught that all of the characteristics of the world that we see as real out there, as well as the world, the experience of a self that we perceive in here, are all empty of intrinsic nature. He taught the second turning from the point of view of a consciousness that was almost completely liberated, almost completely free of confusion. He taught what it was like from that perspective. In the third turning, the last turning of the wheel of Dharma, he taught from the perspective of what remains after you've seen this empty nature. Once you've seen that self and world are empty of intrinsic nature, then what remains? So this very briefly, the first turning teachings were taught in Sarnath, right near present-day Varanasi. It said that the Buddha sort of wandered aimlessly from his meditation seat, found himself hundreds of miles away, and he encountered 5 of his yogic companions, and they kind of had rejected him because he gave up his asceticism. And it said that as soon as the Buddha walked in to the space where they were practicing, that they immediately saw something. And they spontaneously stood up. The Buddha sat down and said, "I have something to tell you." And he proceeded to teach the Four Noble Truths. The truth of suffering, the truth of the origin of suffering, the truth of the cessation of suffering, and the truth of the path. He taught the way in which we exist in dualistic mind, taught that the nature of dualistic experience is suffering. He taught that the cause of that suffering is the constant effort to separate from our experience and manipulate the world externally and internally. And that process then creates a certain kind of craving based on ignoring our true nature. He taught that that's not all there is. He taught in the third truth that there is a gap in that dualistic process. There's a gap in the dream. It's not actually solid or real. And then he taught a path for overcoming that. The path basically can be described as having 3 components. Discipline, the Sanskrit word is shila, meditation or samadhi, and prajna. Wisdom or correct knowing. Typically, this threefold designation is described as the Eightfold Noble Path. Right view and right intention comprise the element of prajna. The element of discipline is right speech, right livelihood, right action. The element of samadhi or meditation is right effort, right concentration or focus, and then right absorption. So the Buddha taught suffering, its causes, taught there's a way out, there's a gap in this process, and he taught a way to make that gap wider and wider and wider. Second turning and building upon that was taught in Rajgir, kind of on the other side of northern India. And this is essentially given to you as the Heart Sutra teaching. He taught about the emptiness of all inner and outer phenomena. Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate. Bodhisvaha proclaims the essence of these Prajnaparamita teachings. And as Ken so eloquently puts it, what the Buddha fundamentally refuted in these second turning teachings was the philosophical basis of the first turning. He refuted the fact that there are these irreducible phenomena or dharmas that all of our experience can be boiled down into. He showed that those too are just compounds. Useful compounds because they help us liberate ourselves from confusion, but they don't intrinsically or inherently exist either. As the Indian joke goes, it's just turtles all the way down. This world is not resting on anything solid. The rabbit hole goes much deeper than we think. And the third turning teachings were given supposedly in response to a king who said to the Buddha, "Your teachings move me, your teachings are of great benefit, but I don't want to renounce my kingdom. In fact, I can't." And the Buddha taught then a way for him to not do that. These teachings were given in an Indian town called Vaishali. And the teachings that were fundamentally revealed at that time are the teachings on Buddha nature. That what remains when we see through our solidification or we see through our dream, what remains is luminosity. What remains is a brilliance beyond thought. What remains is externally a sacred world, a world that's intrinsically illuminated from its own side. And what remains is our own experience of consciousness as being free of egoic solidification, but not free of qualities. In particular, qualities of clarity or wisdom, the ability to see and discern clearly. It's not free of the quality of compassion, not free of a sense of potency, ability to actually engage skillfully and brilliantly with the world. The relationship between the second and third turnings really is the foundation of the Mahayana, what we call the Mahayana view and practice, and as well as the Vajrayana. The world is empty of our preconceptions. That's the fundamental essence of the second turning teaching. The world is empty of our concepts. The world, how we are with each other, is, when we really look closely according to the Buddhist teachings, empty of our conceptualization of it. But it's not a dead emptiness. It's a living, alive, luminous, brilliant space that starts to reveal itself as we go through the difficult and painful process of stepping out of our dream. As we step out of our rigid conceptual dream, then it's said that the Buddha nature starts to dawn. As we soften from our contracted dream, nightmare of reality, then it's said the world reveals itself as intrinsically sacred without our having to make it that way. Our mind reveals itself as intrinsically potent, luminous, naturally responsive.